You voted for it, here it is. My guide to Ophelia, the hero you never ever pick. No, really, look at the statistics. Ophelia is the least picked hero in Heroes of Newerth. Did you know that you're almost 9 times more likely to see a scout in your game than an Ophelia? Just look at this chart I made. Not only is Ophelia dead last, but the discrepancy between her and the second last hero is huge. Now, I've come up with 3 reasons why nobody really wants to play Ophelia, although I should mention that the first one isn't really exclusive to her. First off, nobody wants to play support heroes. I call this the support hero dilemma. If you look at the statistics, every hero in the top 10, excluding Witchslayer who's new, is a hero with a carry component. This has to do with this mentality that kills are rewarding while assists aren't. But the real 2 reasons nobody picks her are as follows. First, nobody knows really how to build or play Ophelia. I've seen Ophelias with codexes, Ophelias who convert enemy creeps, as well as players who just don't have her conversion skill at all. There's some people out there who believe that Ophelia is just an underpowered hero. This isn't true. And now, the third and main reason why nobody picks Ophelia. Nobody wants to micro more than 1 unit. While we're looking at the statistics, it isn't therefore surprising to see that a hero like Wild Soul is at the bottom despite totally being a viable hero. That said, this kind of thing really needs to stop. I encourage you, the viewer, to pick less carry heroes, pick more support heroes, and generally welcome a challenge. The difference between microing 1 and 4 units isn't as hard as you think it is. You should really give it a shot. Let's go over some basics. I'm not going to go over Ophelia's skills like I did in my Puppet Master Guide. Just read what they do. You'll be training command at levels 1, 3, 5, and 7, and Nature's Wrath at every other possible time besides your ultimate. Your slow is incredibly important because it allows your creeps to catch up to the enemy that's running away. Now, there's a lot of people who skip Ophelia's judgment in favor of stats. This strategy has merit, but personally I like having it. Even if I don't train it right away, I usually get it pretty soon. The nuke can come in handy for finishing off a foe, and the teleport is really useful for saving allied heroes' lives. Hero-wise, Ophelia is very fragile, long-ranged, an int hero, and a support hero, whose main trick it is converting creeps. Because of this, you're going to jungle. Whether you jungle in your forest or your enemy's forest is up to you. Unlike some heroes like Tempest who might start juggling at level 3, you can start at 1 with no problem. A lot of people are often confused about what creeps to convert. Basically, Minotaurs are the best pick you can get. Nothing goes over a 2-second AoE stun. Second are Catman Champions and Skeleton Kings. Catman Champions do an AoE slow which deals fair damage, and Skeleton Kings have a ranged immobilizer that goes through magic immunity. Early on, you can also get Vulture Lords if nothing better is available. Later in the game, Wolf Commanders provide a ridiculous 30% damage aura for teamfights, and in special cases, Snotter bosses can be used for the 12% movement speed aura. Let's talk micro. People hate microing. In huge teamfights, it's easy to lose control over what is going on, especially while you're trying to keep Minotaurs as close to enemies as possible while keeping Ophelia safe at the same time. Generally, it's a good idea to have all your units in a control group, which is done by holding control and hitting a number. When you are controlling all of your units, hitting tab flips through your units. Note that all neutral abilities are bound to the button Q. This comes in extremely handy because, for example, if you want to have all your 3 Minotaurs stun one after another, all you would have to do is hit tab, then Q, then tab, and so on. If you want to take control of just Ophelia for any reason, just hit F1 and you will only control her. Unit control is extremely important for maximizing Ophelia's usefulness, and therefore should be practiced. Since when your creeps die, they don't come back, you need to treat your creeps with extreme care. Ophelia is only as useful as the number of units she commands, and if you let them all die early on, you're going to need to find more, which wastes valuable time, especially early on. You might not be aware of it, but Ophelia isn't just a support hero, she's a ganker. As Ophelia, you never want to just sit around in the forest and farm. You want to gank early and often. Since you operate in the forest, opponents who don't get wards can easily be caught by surprise over and over again. Since it isn't hard to have 1 or 2 neutrals really quickly, you can start ganking as early as level 1. People rarely expect it, but a level 3 Ophelia with, say, a Minotaur and a Skeleton King has a ranged slow, a ranged immobilize, and an AoE stun. This doesn't even take into account teammates who will also be helping. When opening up for a gank, I usually do things like this. I start off with all of my units controlled and right-click on the enemy. I then exclusively tell Ophelia to drop her slow. Now, you can start hitting tab and Q once your units are in range to slow or stun an enemy. Now, by this point, I'd probably take control of Ophelia again and have her effectively chase the enemy hero down, dropping a nuke if necessary. Some people don't really know about Ophelia's pushing power, but rest assured, it is ridiculous, especially early. What makes Ophelia such a good pusher is her ultimate. Since it fully heals creeps, microing wounded creeps and swapping them out for full HP ones until they are all low allows you to simply ult and keep pushing. Items for Ophelia are pretty straightforward. She has some core items and then some luxury items. The core items rarely ever change and should be taken first, while the luxury items tend to be taken last and can change depending on what you're fighting. Although it's considered taboo, starting with boots is an acceptable strategy for Ophelia. Boots let Ophelia not only maneuver through the jungle faster for more XP, but also allow her to more effectively carry out early game ganks. Grabbing a clarity potion or two is also advised, as being out of mana with no creeps to tank for you leaves you pretty much useless. Your main core items are Steam Boots, Astrolabe, and Whispering Helm. Steam Boots are taken over Enhanced Marchers because although the attack speed would be nice, Ophelia really lacks survivability, and the strength provided is pretty much mandatory. Astrolabe is pretty self-explanatory. You're a support hero, and having 2 heals is very nice, especially when pushing with your creeps. Now, Whispering Helm might come as a shock to an inexperienced player. It is taken almost solely for its ability to dominate more creeps. Creeps dominated this way gain the HP bonus from command, do not count towards the 3 creep limit, and of course last permanently. Because of this, you should get a Whispering Helm as fast as possible to keep your creep count high. You should also be ready to use it as soon as it's ready due to its long cooldown. In which order you make these items is really up to you. Usually getting a refreshing ornament after boots is a good idea, followed by a Whispering Helm. Bracers and Wards of Sight are optional but should be avoided if possible. Although Ophelia has plenty of room for luxury later, early on she should finish her core items quickly to maximize her early game usefulness. Luxury items include the obvious, such as Totem of Kuldra, Frostwolf Skull, Storm Spirit, Hellflower, Gnome's Wisdom, and so on. Basically anything your team needs. Macro management is just as important as micromanagement, especially for a hero like Ophelia. Like I said, early game, you should be in the jungle, popping out occasionally just to gank. Early and mid-game, you want to be pushing hard. Should your opponents be smart and buy wards to counter neutral creeps from spawning, consider moving to the other jungle. Experienced players won't just let you jungle, they will organize forest search parties to find and gank you. That said, you should always count enemy heroes on your minimap and be aware of anybody missing. They might also set up wards to prevent ganks. Later in the game, the effectiveness of neutral creeps with area of effect abilities kind of fades, because it becomes increasingly hard to micro units such as Minotaurs into big team fights that are dominated by area of effect spam. While you should still try to get stomps off, having a Skeleton King or a Wolf Commander makes it easier to be useful without positioning units. Well, that's all I've got. This has been Nigma, reminding you to pick those heroes you don't want to play. You might just end up liking them.
Johanna, isse nicht gut. Macke dir verseuchte Blut. Johanna, das ist Mist, weil nicht du selber bist. Tu mal lieber die Möhrchen, tu mal lieber die Möhrchen, Mama, tu mal lieber die Möhrchen.